Hey guys, today I wanted to go over a bit of the revenue when it comes to not just AFK Journey, but gacha games in general, and kind of, I guess, talk about some trends that I've seen, things that were interesting about the overall revenue of gacha games in general. Let's get into it. So first and foremost, if you haven't seen this chart already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below, so you guys can take a look as well. But of course, you have the usual suspects at the top. You have stuff like 100 million, which is absolutely ridiculous for a Honkai Star Rail, which of course makes sense because a bunch of characters have been coming out. Penacony is insane. And then you also have stuff like Genshin Impact, Fate Grand Order, Arknights, all doing fairly well. And even stuff like, again, Nikkei is also performing well, kind of going up in profits. I guess all of this is obviously a bit typical, I would say, or trends kind of normally, until we get to this brand new entry into the gacha community or gacha scene with the form of AFK Journey. Now, of course, this is not super crazy. Now, in terms of like placement, I think this is maybe something like the 25th or like 30th. The issue though is you'll notice is that this is at 2.2 million, but there was no indicator for the, for its earnings from the prior month. And you may even think to yourself, how come it's only 2.2 million? Is 2.2 million even that good, especially because it just came out? Well, this sensor chart or this sensor graph, whatever you want to call it, this revenue chart that we found is typically generally indicative. I would say it's like a pretty good indicator for how the game is performing. Has only recorded the information regarding purchases and revenue, I think specifically mobile orders, I'm not exactly sure, but of a game or of any of these games up until April 1st or March 31st, whichever it is. Doesn't sound like it really matters at all until you consider that AFK Journey came out on the 26th, technically 27th of March. Now that means that in about 4 days worth of playing, advertising, etc., the game has made $2.2 million, which is nothing to scoff at. Now again, you compare it to other games that, arguably have not just recently released and don't have nearly as much advertising. Just to kind of put in perspective, if they're doing $2.2 million this early on, it would be tough to say that their future doesn't look decently bright. Now, to be clear, there are plenty of things, in my opinion, there are to love about specifically AFK Journey, and of course, I do want to go over them. Let's just go over really quick the interesting things about the game, things that are of note, and kind of the standout features when it comes to the game. Now, of course, if you've taken a look at AFK Journey or seen any of the plenty of people that have been talking about the game on social media, through sponsor streams, etc., you know that one of the main kind of selling factors about the game is that, of course, it's a gacha game. It's fairly generous in terms of giving you resources, and ultimately, in terms of actual content or what there is to do, they have a number of content or different things that you can do that kind of continuously persuade you to come back to the game. Now, whether that's the Dream Realm, which again gives you a decent amount of rewards in terms of pulling currency or upgrading your character, or if that's even something like the Arena, which in my opinion is arguably one of the most fun because you have to kind of figure out how good certain opponents' teams are, or like how you can defend your own defense, and and even in terms of building in a formation, not only do you have to kind of figure out what characters are strongest or what relic or artifact or what specific spell you want to use to counter teams, you have a full roster to kind of mix and match and find out what exactly you want. And that's not even taken into consideration if you end up switching the different maps and seeing what works for you or what's strong, what's weak, etc., etc. Now, between all of this, of course, they obviously have stuff like dailies, and typically in other games, dailies are kind of a hassle. No one really likes doing dailies. They give you the currency and that's fine, but no game really feels like truly once you complete your daily, you feel like you are hitting an incredible stride, like you are now suddenly much stronger than you were the day before because you decided to clear your dailies. That's not the case though with AFK Journey, where sincerely and without any kind of cap or dishonesty whatsoever, every single time that you log back on and you receive the rewards from Chippy or your AFK kind of expedition, it actually feels like you are much stronger in terms of being able to beat other monsters or encounters that you were otherwise doomed to fail to or weren't able to actually clear because you were too weak. Or if it's just the fact that you're stronger, and now when you see your guildmates or if you go into PvP, now you are much stronger, and opponents that you were formerly not able to beat now get crushed because you have more skills or you have more upgrades, you have more combat power, anything in between. Now, of course, we already touched on the generosity of the game and honestly the things that kind of bring you back to the game, but let's not just cap about how honestly beautiful the game looks and how decent the song and sounds and everything in between are about the game. If you even just take a listen to the in-game kind of atmosphere of the game. Of course, I am no like specific female character in the game, and I'm not super invested in exactly like immersing myself as the exact character, but there's, you know, a very towny feeling with the music. There's birds chirping if I walk around, like I'll like ruffle through flowers and stuff like this. And these things I understand you could definitely kind of disregard. Who cares about immersing yourself in a gacha game? But the honest to God truth is that AFK Journey is not only just kind of a gacha game, it kind of also feels like an MMORPG. Now again, you have stuff like petting a dog, there's a very cute sound effect, there's characters and families and stuff and dialogue that you have between your NPCs that really makes the game feel alive, and all these kind of contribute to what I consider to be the most important thing about any gacha game right now, which is how invested you are in it. Now, how you get invested in a gacha game is completely up to you and fairly subjective, because stuff like Genshin or other Hoyoverse titles will generally cause viewers to kind of enjoy the lore, enjoy the way that characters look, or the design of characters, gameplay, etc. But AFK Journey has a different kind of persuasion to the gameplay and kind of the allure to it. And what I mean by that is that rather than try to convince you that every single character looks so insane, so unique, which although like honestly they kind of do to begin with, you are kind of allured by this endless grind, which is kind of accentuated, number one, by the kind of reminder that, hey, you can upgrade your gear, or hey, you can get more imprints, or hey, pull from me right now. And although these are things that maybe you kind of swat away at first, you realize that, hey, yeah, well actually when Trippy is saying that I can get more levels, the more levels will contribute to how much more clearing or how many more floors of like a tower that I can clear, that will then give me more rewards. It also really helps that in terms of PvP, if you do have some interest in just kind of beating up your opponents, you have an arena-esque Hearthstone arena where you have honor duel and you get to kind of randomize your compositions, and that lets you play against or kind of mix and match different teams and kind of beat against other opponents. But that isn't even talking about the variety of challenge content that the game has to offer through, again, stuff like you're only allowed to use a certain element to clear out certain content. The content and the rewards from each of these pieces of challenge content, by the way, are extremely crazy. They're very, very good, and they're some of the only ways to actually obtain powder, which you need to upgrade your characters. And again, none of this is even talking about Arcane Labyrinth, which is kind of the simulated universe equivalent, the endless abyss, you know, clearing content, or whatever gacha game you want to call it. It's very, very, very satisfying to kind of pull up with something like this, get a bunch of power-ups to your characters that make you do infinite damage, like millions upon millions of damage, or they have special effects where like if you hit an enemy and you crit, you stun. All of these kind of interesting effects are kind of like the roguelike aspect, which again, if you talk about like the most loved or beloved aspects of certain gacha games, you start to combine, or you start to see that a lot of these features that are good from other games have kind of been combined and rooted all together into AFK Journey. Another thing that's really, really interesting about the game is that, of course, if you do have any interest in not just playing the game AFK, but want some complexity to the game, this is your game. And to kind of tie things back to, again, the gacha performance or why the game is doing so well, look no further again than the combination of waifu characters, right, like Cisia, but also, again, like decent on-release skins with the form of Vala. You have, again, decent interest in terms of how creative or how in-depth certain skills are. You can take a look at Vala's skills, and a lot of these are very, very complex, and you sometimes won't even know how impactful some of these upgrades are until you kind of mix and match in the overworld or wherever you're ending up trying to fight. But part of the passion and the spark and the excitement, at least for me when I was starting to play the game for the first time, was that I had no idea about the game, or I wasn't as familiar with the game, and I was trying to figure out what the strongest compositions were or what things worked very well. And to, again, kind of reiterate and kind of explain why I'm so infatuated with the game right now is that, of course, like, admittedly, I am sponsored and I understand that. However, the actual in-depth or kind of replayability when it comes to the game, whether that's through doing my dailies, which take a little bit of time, but also allow me to do PvP or fight against other players on certain occasions. The game itself is just genuinely interesting enough that I have characters that I like, I want to pull. If you've ever played games like Nikke or Journey, whatever games in between, they may not have the most involved gameplay ever, but in the name of trying to gain additional currency so you can pull for new characters, it is in your best interest to be playing the game as frequently as possible and gaining as high rewards as you can, which is what you can see if you're especially doing stuff like Dream Realm or the Arena. But once again, to kind of reiterate and talk about the chart, of course, AFK Journey, at least from what we know, is no $100 million game, which kind of makes sense because China and Honkai Star Rail are just tied at the waist. They kind of spend just an insane amount of money. Literally, if you look at the profits from February, that's $60 million to then more than, you know, like to increase its profits by like a third to now go to 99 million. That's absolutely crazy. And again, while I do see, or I have seen people say like, oh, well, AFK Journey has only made $2.2 million. That is, again, just for pure reference, a 4-day kind of tracking number, which again is actually pretty decent. Formerly, if you heard opinions about AFK Journey or what people thought about it, I feel like the very kind of common assumption when it comes to the game is that the game is very AFK-able, and if you wanted to, you can maybe just play AFK Arena instead. But the game itself has enough fresh air to kind of interest or intrigue players from the old game to try the new game, and ultimately, as you can see with its profits, it's kind of working. Anyways, guys, I kind of just wanted to point out how AFK Journey was doing and why I think it's doing so well. Again, there are plenty of things that you could criticize, you know, maybe need to be worked on, but for what it's worth right now, they are, again, one of the most intriguing kind of gacha games on the market. They're not super suggestive or anything like that. There's kind of in-depth, interesting decisions that you have to make in order to actually get ahead of people that are especially higher level than you. But of course, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Again, long story short, I really like the game. It's kind of treating me well, not only just on YouTube, but also just in terms of like my mental and being able to try a new gacha game. But anyways, guys, again, like I said, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. I appreciate everyone that's been leaving feedback and giving me kind of things to work on when it comes to the genre. If you guys like this edited kind of video, make sure to let me know. But yeah, thanks again for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Good night.